I cannot be silent.
Back when Eisenhower was the president, golf courses is where most of his time was spent. So I never really listened to what the president said, because in general I believed that the general was politically dead. But he always seemed to know when the muscles were about to be flexed, because I remember him saying something, mumbling something about a military-industrial complex.
As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But they ask, and rightly so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our home nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problem, to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands trembling under our violence, I cannot be silent.
Each one reach one, each one time.
I cannot be silent.
Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Everyone must play a part. Everyone's got to go to work. Work for peace. Spirit say work.
I cannot be silent.
Empowering the body, mind, and spirit. This is We Cannot Be Silent with Phil Restino and Larry Pinkney.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Monday, July 21st, 2014 edition of We Cannot Be Silent with Phil Restino and Larry Pinkney. My name is Phil Restino, and Larry Pinkney's with us on the other line. And tonight we have a very, very special show here on the Wolf Spirit Radio Network. Our guest is truly amazing. We're very excited to have her. Larry said to be succinct in introducing our guest, but it's hard to do with this person, with her, all her accomplishments and her background. Our guest tonight is we labeled it Incomparable Cynthia McKinney, and when anyone who knows about her and what she's been able to do for the world would agree with that. I'm going to read from the back cover of her book, her new book, Ain't Nothing Like Freedom by Cynthia McKinney, and this bit here pretty much gives you a good taste. Elected 6 times to the House from the state of Georgia, Cynthia McKinney cut a trail through congressional deceit like a hot ember through ash. She discovered legislators who passed laws without reading them, party leaders who colluded across party lines against their constituents' interests, black-skinned individuals shilling for the white status quo. She excoriated government lassitude over Hurricane Katrina, uncovering dark secrets. She held the only critical congressional briefing on 9/11, introducing counter-testimony of scholars, investigators, former intelligence agents. As a member of the House Armed Services Committee, she held Rumsfeld to account for malfeasance by military contractors and missing billions in the Pentagon's budget. Then she hammered him on the reasons for the failure of NORAD air defenses on 9/11. She read truth into the congressional record, held town halls and hearings, led protests, showed up while others played along to get along, took the side of the people against the will of the party. And when she got to truth-seeking and speaking, the Republicans rigged the Democratic primaries to boot her out. leaving behind a trail of achievements mostly won single-handedly as a result of her service on the House International Relations, House Agriculture, House Armed Services, and Budget Committees, and the Select Committee of Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. But McKinney rose again like a phoenix, answering the call to run as 2008 Green Party candidate for president, challenging the corrupt two-party stranglehold on American democracy. Then it was on to the Freedom Flotilla to Gaza, to be seized on the high seas and imprisoned in Israel. On to Tripoli, to serve as witness to the NATO terror bombing of Libya. On to Malaysia, to serve as an official witness for the War Crimes Commission. Often introduced as the Sojourner of Truth, the Harriet Tubman of our age, this is the Cynthia McKinney saga as it stands to date, what she saw, what she learned, and how she fought for change. And that's from the back cover of Cynthia McKinney's Ain't Nothing Like Freedom. And right now, I would like to have the honor and privilege of welcoming the Honorable Cynthia McKinney, former Congresswoman from Georgia and presidential candidate on the Green Party ticket from 2008. Cynthia McKinney, welcome to We Cannot Be Silent on the July 21st, 2014 broadcast.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's you and Larry are my friends, and you know, in the business that I come from, friends are very rare. So it's nice for me to be here and spend this evening with you.
Oh, well, we're happy to have you. And I know I want to bring Larry in quickly to let Larry say welcome to you as well on air. Larry?
Yes. Sister Cynthia, as you well know, we are deeply honored to have you. You are a warrior, a 21st century warrior, and you have been for decades. We deeply love you. We deeply appreciate you. I'm not going to take a lot of time. I'm just going to use 4 words to describe you as I see you. And those words would be courage, integrity, guts, and consistency. Thank you so much for being with us. We're looking forward to a wonderful program. Thank you, my sister.
Thank you.
All right. Well, okay, Cynthia. Well, boy, I first became aware of you early on in the 2002 election when they did run you out of office along with Senator Max Cleland, and they got rid of Senator Paul Wellstone in another way. But you were there taking on 9/11 when others weren't. And I don't know if that's where you would like to start off here, as far as you know, your battles with the powers that be and your leadership, or is there something else that you would like to start off with on the program tonight with us?
No, I think I'll just go wherever you lead me.
Okay.
One thing about being a leader is that you got to be a good follower too.
I hear you. Well, Paul Craig Roberts is also, he wrote on the back of your book, America and the Constitution will be safe the day Cynthia McKinney or a similar person is president of the United States. And coming from Paul Craig Roberts, that's I take whatever he says with a lot of respect and consideration, and I have to agree with what he said there. And our friend Bob Bowman, who I imagine you shared the stage with over the years, and if not, certainly passed each other in the airports coming to and fro. His slogan was "Follow the Constitution, honor the truth, and serve the people." And to me, that tells me right there, that's Cynthia McKinney as well. And that's what I saw when I first took notice of you early on in the 2000s. And maybe you could tell us what was going on when you were already in Congress in the 90s. But what was going on back then, and what were things like? What were the issues and the fights that you were having?
Well, Phil and Larry, I guess I would start just by saying that I'm, as you can probably hear, I'm from Georgia. Mm-hmm. And I grew up during I'm a child of the civil rights era and the civil rights movement. I grew up with protests in the city of Atlanta, and, surrounded by Alabama and what was going on there, South Carolina. And so, you could say that the civil rights movement is steeped in me and I'm steeped in it. So, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s leadership meant something to me. And the leadership of people like my dad, the unsung heroes, it meant something to me. I saw people sacrifice their entire lives for principles and values. And when I had the opportunity to run for Congress, which was not something that I had planned to do, but when the opportunity presented itself, I did. And from the very moment that I was sworn in, I was under attack. And I remained under attack even as I exited the Congress. But during that time, of course, you're a veteran, so you know that when you engage the enemy has to reveal himself. Mm-hmm. And so I learned a lot through the series of engagements. I really learned what politics is like in the United States. I learned what shadow democracy we have, because we don't have the substance of democracy. We don't have it in reality. And I learned how the power works for some people and it seems to never work for other people. Mm-hmm. So when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter, I really took that to heart. And so I began to share the things that I was learning about the way Capitol Hill was operating. It really was rotten. And then, of course, when September 11th occurred and they gave us this dog and pony show after the numerous dog and pony shows that we had about various other things, mm-hmm. It was just, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I just had to say, okay, we need a real investigation. And as I was saying to someone just today, that I was by myself. And people forget that I was the only one in Congress who said we need to have an investigation. All of those other voices came after mine. Mm-hmm. And they didn't pay the price that I paid because I stood up for the American people. And then there was another phenomenon that just really bothered me, and we saw it just happen last week, and that is with the unanimous consent resolution that was passed in the Senate. In the Senate, yeah. For the Stand by Israel as Israel began its invasion of Gaza. And that resolution passed unanimously. That means that people who are being championed today, senators who are being championed today like Elizabeth Warren, remain quiet. Remember, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter.
Yes.
And if life and death and the Constitution and rule of law and respect for international, the dignity of other people, and I mean, if that isn't something that moves one to speak in the face of what's happening now, then I don't want you to speak for me when it's easy. Anybody can speak when it's easy. And so we are facing a situation literally right now where we have a wonderful potential candidate who's being promoted in all of the right places as the candidate of choice, the candidate, sort of the anti-Hillary Clinton. But when the time came to provide a voice for things that matter, like war crimes, crimes against humanity, crimes against the peace, they're silent. And so what I don't understand is why it is that the people of this country haven't figured out that we really do have to do something different. And we cannot accept the promotions, the Madison Avenue blitz that individuals get. They get it because they've already been pre-vetted, and they know the powers that be from on high know that on the things that really matter, they're not going to say anything. And if they say it, they're not going to do it. There won't be any follow-up. And the people have to demand more. The people have to be better followers in order to have better leaders.
And that's something that's come up, Cynthia, with this whole thing about leadership. And Larry often speaks about each one reach one, each one teach one. A lot of it has to do with reclaiming our own power first and acting ourselves. And there's that old saying, when the people lead, the leaders will follow. Kind of tag along with what you were just saying. You're right. If this last vote, 100 to 1, 100 to nothing, on the Israel thing is basically giving them the green light to commit further genocide over there on the people of Palestine. If this doesn't show that when folks get up to that level, they're not serving you, the people, for whatever reason, I don't know what does. And I really believe Larry and I on this show, we try to find what we can do to change things, and I wanted to ask both you and Larry about being active in the communities, the local communities, and how that affects what's done in our name. And I don't know who wants to go first, Larry or Cynthia, on that idea as far as activism in our communities and how that relates to what's going on in our name.
Sister, you go ahead. I'll follow.
Well, the only thing I was going to do is hand it over to you because, with Larry's background, Larry is the very definition of community action. And I don't understand how people who have been in a privileged position in this country can feel that they are powerless. I don't get that. Now, if I were a black person from the South, a black woman from the South, as I am, I could understand somebody saying, okay, well, I'm powerless. I can't change things. I just have to go with the flow, you know, don't rock the boat. But this country was made by people, Larry and Phil. This country was made not for me, because quite frankly, this country was made by my labor, unpaid. Mm-hmm. It was made as a result of the theft of the land from the indigenous people. Mm-hmm. But the Europeans who came over here became white very soon after labor began to join regardless of color. And then, of course, you know, there's the Professor Jeff Perry who talks about the invention of the white race and how that all happened. And that race really is, or the white race, that nomenclature and the designation is really a method of labor control. It's social control. So I don't understand how people who have always had a superior position than me can feel that they are powerless. Could you explain that?
Point well taken, point well made, my dear sister. You know, one of the things that it's imperative that all of us understand is that when we fail to use our power, then of course what we've done, you know that expression, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I like the way you put it, when you referred to the nomenclature. I call it a mythology, this white race mythology, because it's mythology. This was something that was designed as a wedge, and as you also used the term social control. And that's precisely what it is about, especially in the United States of America. It's all about social control. And we saw an example of that last week in the U.S. Senate, when these knuckleheads, without one person, not one, standing up to say, wait a minute, this is outrageous. How can we stand by those who are in our name committing mass genocide? They're committing mass slaughter, if you will. And this is a part, in my humble opinion, this is a part of we the people giving up, and I repeat, giving up our power, not using our power, but being dumbed down and allowing ourselves. We have to take responsibility for that. I mean, the American people, contrary to popular myth, are not really, you know, we're not stupid, but oftentimes we have allowed ourselves to be lazy, intellectually dishonest. We have allowed ourselves to go along, to get along, when in point of fact, by doing that, we are then complicit. We become complicit, if you will, in the destruction of this nation, the destruction of the planet Mother Earth. We ourselves, as Dr. King said, we cannot be silent. That's, of course, where we, as you know, Cynthia, where we got the name for this radio show. We cannot be silent. I would go so far as to say we must not be silent. So I don't think that, for me at least, and for many, many others, and I think for you, Sister Cynthia, it's not a question of whether or not we should be activists or active or organizing. It's not a question at all. We have to be, because our very humanity, number one, is at stake, and number two, our very survival and that of our posterity and of our precious Mother Earth are at stake. So we have no choice as human beings. I'll stop right there. I don't want to digress, and I don't want to give a sermon. So I'll just leave it at that.
But Larry and Phil,
mm-hmm.
here's my issue with that, and it's you know, I get tired of losing. And we're losing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. It is not that I want to give up or anything like that. But, you know, after the election was stolen from me in 2006, I took and then I did the Green Party thing in 2008, but, and then I did the Gaza thing, and then I did the Libya thing. But after the Libya thing, then Larry, you know, I'm in school, and I've taken this hiatus so that I can do some introspection and try and figure out how we can hone our methods so that we can stop losing. The other side seems to always be able to figure out some tactic that they can divide us on.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And once we're divided, then, you know, it's like my father, he used to do this thing where he would have his fingers all separated, and then he would bring them together and ball up a fist. And he said that was just like us. If we remain individuals like this, then we can be picked off one by one. Yes. But if we join forces, if we join together, we can be as strong as a fist.
Right.
I don't know why we keep falling for the same, you know, it's the same playbook. They run it over and over and over again, and it always seems to work.
Yeah. I mean, you know, this may sound very blunt, and I can't help myself. I do tend to be very blunt. So let me just say that I think a great deal of this has to do with collaborators. We have collaborators who talk one thing and do another. We have collaborators, and I don't care what their color, black, white, brown, turquoise, it's irrelevant. They are collaborators with a system that they know to be corrupt, from bottom to top, corrupt. And I think that one of the things we have to honestly do, and you've done it repeatedly, Cynthia, and you've been attacked viciously for doing it. Nevertheless, if anything, that just proves how correct you actually were. And what I'm talking about is you have stood up time and time again and told the truth. But you have also been, and I'm just going to say it like it is, I'm not going to call any names, but you have also been backstabbed by collaborators who in your face was saying, "Oh, Cynthia, we're with you. We love what you say. We love the fact you're standing up." But meanwhile, they're working with the man, if you'll excuse that expression from my Black Panther Party days, working with the man and working with the system. They're what I call the spook who sat beside the door in reverse. And this is something that I see as one of our fundamental challenges or problems. I'm trying to be diplomatic. That we have so many collaborators. We need to call these people out. We need to put them on Front Street. We need to pull no punches. I will never forget what and how, not just what, but how what was done to you, the champion of the people, the champion. I was and remain so proud of you that it is very difficult for me to put it into words. But I remember the blood-sucking swine that actually stabbed not only you, but the movement that you represented. I remember in 2008, for example, the Power to the People campaign, your campaign.
Yes.
I remember it well. And for that, I honor and I salute you, and I don't think you did anything wrong or incorrect. I think what happened was, and that's continuing to happen today, is a bunch of no-good, slimy collaborators working for the system. I call them torpedoes, okay, who did all that they could to sabotage. Nonetheless, your message has gotten out, will continue to get out, and I think the point that both you and Phil made about what happened in the Senate, the U.S. Senate last week, is an excellent example. Why didn't, for example, Elizabeth Warren stand up and say, no, this is unacceptable. Her voice should have been out there, not just hers, but you know, we have to call these people out for what they are. Put them on Front Street. Either you are with the people, everyday, ordinary, black, white, brown, red, and yellow people, or you are not. Can't have our cake and eat it too. Cannot, will not, let's not play that game. Because that's why we keep losing. And that's my take on it.
Well, you know, Larry, I absolutely 100% agree with you that the movement would be much further along if we didn't have to deal, if we dealt with collaborators. You're absolutely right. We can't expect, if you can't stand up in the face of genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, torture, if you remain silent on that, then I can't expect you to stand up when it's my turn and I'm in the city of Detroit and they're shutting down my water.
Right.
And when you talk about collaborators, the emergency city manager by the name of Kevin Orr is a collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
He's a collaborator. And so we have to, in fact, one of my favorite scenes or teaching moments is the original scene from Roots when they're trying to break Kunta Kinte and make him accept the name Toby.
Mm-hmm.
And the scene has Lorne Green, he's the plantation owner, and he's sitting in his office in the big house, and he finds out that they've found Kunta, who has run away. They found him, they brought him back, and then Lorne Green relieves the guy Fiddler of his responsibility to break Kunta Kinte in right because he failed. And so then there's they told me I don't get these names right, but there's the slave driver, and then there's the slave hand and the slave driver. The slave driver, I believe, is the white man, and the slave hand is his assistant, who is a slave. Mm-hmm. And when at that moment when they're whipping Kunta and telling him to say his name, which is Toby, which is supposed to be Toby, but he refuses until the very last end, the white slave driver gives the whip to the black man and tells him to do the whipping.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the scene, the camera fades to the rest of the slaves on the plantation who have all been called to watch as Kunta is broken and eventually says his name is Toby.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I ask people to do is to bring this scene up to 2014. Who is the plantation owner? Who is the slave driver? Who is the slave hand? Who are the bystanders?
Mm.
And once we understand that some systems of oppression and domination have not changed, the face has changed, but the system hasn't changed, then I think it's a lot easier for people to then envision themselves in a different way, more powerful. Mm-hmm. At least I hope so.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think you're absolutely correct. And you know, as you were speaking, Cynthia, I was thinking, and when you told the part about, you know, how the black slave, the slave was told, all right, you whip him in front of the other slaves. You whip him. You know what I thought about, Cynthia? I thought about our dear sister with the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. You know where I'm going. And what was done to her. That is precisely what was done to Fannie Lou Hamer. And I mean quite literally, specifically, she was literally beaten. They told the black men, you who were in prison or who were jailed, you beat this woman. You beat her. And so you're correct. The faces may change. The game is the same. The tune is the same. And you know, I think about. That's what you were saying brought to my mind. I thought about Fannie Lou Hamer and how the Democratic Party, including Hubert H. Humphrey, including Lyndon Baines Johnson, including did I mention Hubert Humphrey?
Yes.
And Walter Mondale. These people just literally sold out not only black people, and that's what we need to understand, that every time we get sold out, the nation is being sold out. Everybody's being sold out. Because when we are sold out, it is selling out the very principles for which this Constitution that we have, which unfortunately these days simply seems to be a piece of paper, but the Constitution is being nullified, made null and void, negated. And, you know, that's precisely what's been done. This individual that sits in the White House today, nothing more, of course, than really a caricature of a man. And I just got to say it like it is, because or of a human. That's more to the point. Not of a man, of a human. You know, and we have to really say it like it is. The so-called CBC, the Congressional, and I'm not talking about the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I'm talking about the Congressional Black Caucus. More collaborators, all right, collaborating with a system for personal gain. They say one thing, they do another. Some of them are actually speaking right out and saying, yeah, I am a corporate shill. I do work for the corporations, and what you're going to do about it? Well, we, the people, need to show them what we're going to do about it. They need to be removed because they are collaborators. You know, so I just, the more you were talking, the more I was thinking about these examples. I'll be silencio. I will be silent.
and that's, I'm sorry, go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, I just want to echo what Larry is saying, and it's something that I've said for a very long time. And sometimes I get tired of saying the same thing over and over again. And sometimes I think, well, okay, I'll just shut up and be quiet and maybe people will draw their own conclusions without me actually saying it. But when how can I say, violations of the constitutional rights occur against black people, then eventually it's going to come over and affect white people too. So I say, why don't y'all stop it with us so it won't happen to y'all? And toward that end, I'm just going to go down the list of quotes that I have on my email, which I really like these quotes. And the first one that I want to mention actually it comes from Steve Coakley. Now, I don't know, Phil, do you know who Steve Coakley is?
No, please do tell.
Well, Steve Coakley was, because now he's deceased, it's even hard for me to believe that he's dead now. But Steve Coakley was what we call a street researcher. And his subject matter was the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Because inside the story of that assassination are collaborators. And these collaborators are black people.
Right.
In order for COINTELPRO to be successful at whatever stage it was, whether it was pre-COINTELPRO against Marcus Garvey or the heart of COINTELPRO against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X, it was it's the story also of black collaborators, that comprador class. And so Steve Coakley named the collaborators. One of the persons that he named, actually a book is about to be written, and thank goodness I'm not writing the book, but it'll be very interesting to see, because I've been told that all of the names of all of the collaborators are going to be called. But Steve Coakley's quote is this: "The Bush family has a political dynasty that the Kennedy family was not allowed to have." With the talk about Jeb Bush running for office, running for president, and we've got the young Bush that just won some statewide office, or the right to represent the party for a statewide office down in Texas. That's something that is worth thinking about. It's worth more than thinking about. It's worth contemplating, because that decade of the 60s where the assassinations took place changed the course of the United States forever up to now. And why is it that the Kennedy family, the most they can get, it is an appointment to Japan post Fukushima, where she's getting irradiated? She should have turned President Obama down when he offered her Tokyo. And now, of course, we have a Japanese doctor who says everybody needs to be evacuated from Tokyo. That just came out 2 days ago.
And you know what, Cynthia and Larry, I think comparing the 60s to now, and people active then and not being active now, I think there's some factors here. One is a lot of people don't know, and then if they are presented with information, they don't even know how to become active, where to turn, and what to do. There really has been a lot lost in the decades since. The artificial division amongst the people, as you spoke of earlier, that as long as the people are divided, and that was a great example that you shared with your father spreading his hand out, fingers separated, and then bringing the fingers together, and then clenching into a fist, and there you have power. That's still the formula. And as far as collaborators, that's been around since what, the days of Caesar and beyond that.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and I think one of the best ways, or a good way to expose these folks, is for people like yourself and Larry and what we've done with the Bob Bowman chapter of Veterans for Peace, is stay consistent, adhere, not waver from the truth and principle. And in doing so, it's like that light in, lighting a match or a candle into a dark room. I don't know what the metaphor is for that, but you get what I'm saying. I think a big part of it is staying true and not compromising, and you've been a marvelous example of that, and that was part of when we introduced you as the incomparable Cynthia McKinney, and the world would be a much better place if you weren't the incomparable Cynthia McKinney, meaning that there were more of you.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? And what we found, I went back to Dr. Paul Craig Roberts' interview of you back in 2012, and he asked about leadership, and you shared about leadership in the black community, and Larry and I have been addressing this topic. Well, heck, we've been on air now for over 2.5 years, and we've been addressing the what's been going on in the black community since Obama has been put into office, Larry was writing about this in his column, Keeping It Real with Larry Pinkney, back in 2007. He was trying to warn the community about don't take the bait. Don't be fooled by what they're giving you with this Obama. I remember you in 2007 speaking up about AFRICOM.
Yes.
And look where we are with that, okay? And I do want to touch on, get your take for the audience, both you and Larry, on the black community, as you mentioned, back in the 60s, it was very strong, and yes, it was the civil rights movement at the time, but the black community was known for being against these phony wars of aggression. They were always against things like that, and standing for the cause, standing for what's right. And then you mentioned Malcolm X earlier. Right is right and wrong is wrong, no matter who does it. But here we are under the age of Obama, and a lot's missing there, and I wanted both you, Larry, to address that, if you would.
Well, my contribution would be, I'm still going down my list of quotes, and I have here Steve Biko, but it fits right in. Mm-hmm. And Steve Biko said the biggest weapon in the hands of the oppressors is the minds of the oppressed.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the minds of the people of the United States. Much of the problem of the world could be resolved if the people of the United States would take affirmative action and vote a new Congress in that has the radical revolution of values that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. talked about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's all it would take. And we don't even need all 535. We just need a few who are true to the cause. But as long as people feel defeated already, which I don't understand that, feel powerless, then of course we're going to continue to get what we got. And the biggest weapon that has been removed from progressive United States is the contribution of the black community under President Obama. It's gone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which Cynthia is quite frankly, again being very candid, is one of the primary reasons that this Obamatron was installed. He was selected. He was selected, and then he was installed. Obviously, the big corporations, the military, prison, industrial conglomerate complex, if you will, made sure that he was installed into that position. And one of the reasons is because his job was to neutralize the liberation struggle of the American people, not only the black liberation struggle, but the liberation struggle across the board of black, white, brown, red, and yellow people. And that struggle emanates from consciousness, to be conscious, as Steve Biko said when he talked about the most potent weapon, the most powerful weapon, as you just quoted, in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So in fact, what we as everyday ordinary black, white, brown, red, and yellow people are is our minds are targets for what I call the vomit stream, corporate stream media, which is in essence the handmaiden of the power elite that runs this country and this nation, and of course, in by extension, the world, Mother Earth. But as you so eloquently pointed out just now, sister, this can be changed. It can actually be changed in a heartbeat. We don't need, like the left says, the masses. No, we need a critical mass of key people who remain true, as you have, year after year after year after year, to the struggle and to the principles, I emphasize the word, the principles of the struggle. And so I think just by listening to what you just said, my sister, you have told us, you have reminded us of that which we should have known.
And another thing too, I've had the opportunity during this journey that I'm on for my schoolwork to go back and revisit the COINTELPRO papers and the Frank Church Senate Select Committee on Intelligence Activities and the Family Jewels, which is the assassination records of some of the activities in Latin America, Operation Condor, Operation Gladio. And so what I would like for other people to do is to, Larry, I know you lived COINTELPRO, but there are people who don't even know what COINTELPRO is. And they still believe that the government of the United States will not tell them a lie. Now, those are the people who need to read the COINTELPRO papers the most. Now, I doubt if there are any who are listening to us tonight. But if there are, I would encourage, if there's anyone in the audience who has not yet read the COINTELPRO papers, please do so. Because then you will know not to believe a thing that comes from the lips of those people in Washington, D.C. who claim that they're acting on your behalf.
And think for ourselves. That's what I want to get back to. We have to go back to thinking for ourselves and not giving up our power to others, thinking that they're going to do it for us. I understand what you said, starting fresh with a clean slate, with a Congress of folks that, enough folks with a critical mass that are loyal to the Constitution, honor the truth, and serve the people. But they've also got to have cover. Back in, Cynthia, before Obama shock and awe bombed Libya on 19 March 2011, a major war crime. On the very same day that Junior Bush shock and awe bombed Iraq 8 years earlier, I called into the Power Hour radio show with Joyce Riley, and you had been on the program before, and Larry's been on multiple times. And we were talking about the subterfuge, the no-fly zone, all this, and for where are the congressmen or the other leaders to come out and say no. And the issue had come up with impeachment at the time. Once Obama bombed Libya then you had left and right pundits, left and right members of Congress. You had Bruce Fine on the right and Francis Boyle on the left as far as legal experts, all calling for impeachment. Yet the anti-war movement was mute. And, you know, we can talk about that, why. But the point that was being made is it's hard for a member of Congress, and you know this from your own experience, or a leader to go out on a limb without the support of people behind them. You know, they need cover. And I think what's the people here have been conditioned to do, they don't understand that in order for them to come out, it's not that they come out and give the people cover to get behind them. It's backwards. We, the people, have to come out and give cover for someone in a position like yourself to do, you know, and you did introduce articles of impeachment, by the way, little known fact, after Nancy Pelosi said impeachment's off the table. But you got to have the cover of the people, and there's the missing link. And I think we really need to educate our own communities with this. People don't know how to be active anymore. People don't know the responsibility they have first in order to have their representatives in Congress or wherever, their whatever representatives, go to bat for them and do the right thing. And we've been having a heck of a time here in Daytona Beach, as Larry knows, and you might know, Cynthia. We've been out against the war every Thursday night for 9 years, dealing with our local community and staying consistent on our message and standards from 2005, when it was Junior Bush, the white Republican, doing it, through 2009 to 2014, all along when it was the black Democrat Obama doing it. And I will tell you, we stay consistent, but you look at how the people react, both there is a divide, a political divide, a team loyalty, you know, a race loyalty. At first, when we were out there with our impeach Obama, prosecute Bush signs in the early years of Obama's presidency, we caught a lot of flack from the folks because, as I mentioned, our corner is right on the black section of the city. And we stayed consistent. We caught a lot of heat. We expected it. But as time stood on, and as we continued to be there every Thursday and continued to hand out the flyers, you know, about AFRICOM, what Obama's been doing as a continuation of George Bush, and thanks a lot to the left cover that's allowed for what this, and he is a puppet. Pretty much every president's a puppet. You know, you said earlier, we got to understand how the system works. And we've, you know, we got to stop personalizing these puppets, you know, as being one of us or one of our team. And so I think what's happened over the years is we've been showing up every week, and the people are getting it now. They're getting it, and they see us as far as being consistent, and they're getting the message. Are they going to come out and stand with us? Most likely not, but that's not the point. The point is to educate the community and have a more informed, properly informed citizenry. And so that's been our experience with staying consistent here with the call for impeachment for the war crimes, the very same war crimes and then some that George Bush was called on, and our work in the community locally. The left cover that's allowed the current president to continue basically what the last president was doing. And if you look back in history and look back at the flip-flop, Democrat, Republican, and now we have white Republican, black Democrat, you know, it's the same thing, you know, it doesn't change. So it comes a point in time where, you know, we've got to say, hey, let's stop playing this game. And you were talking about that earlier. What do we got here with Obama in this term. It's 2014. We've got more war than we ever had. We've got targeted assassinations of American citizens, you know, the NDAA. What do you see, and what do you see as something that we might be able to do to counter it?
Well, I just keep preaching the same thing, and that is that we, the people, have to become we, the followers, and we, the leaders. I mean, you know, we really have to do something differently if we expect to have things in the country different. I just realized that you're in Daytona Beach, and that has some proximity to Daytona?
Oh, yes, the Speedway and all that, sure. And it's also where Bethune-Cookman College, which is one of the prominent black colleges in the South, is Bethune-Cookman here in Daytona Beach. And it recent years has been reaccredited as Bethune-Cookman University. And we've got that's near the section of the city where we've been demonstrating for 9 years, and so we're on the ground. We interact with the community on a weekly basis, and have learned a lot about this. Go ahead.
You know, when during those last days, this is one of the areas in which I have some regret that I'm no longer in Congress, because I can't help the people who came to me for help. And there's a community of black people in, I can't remember if it was Daytona Beach, or I guess the city is Daytona Beach.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And they were doing, and the authorities there do some kind of spraying. Are you familiar with that?
Spraying.
And the spray, they claim they're spraying for like mosquitoes or whatever. And they come through the neighborhood with chemicals, and they spray, or at least they were spraying these chemicals in the neighborhood, and they wouldn't tell the people what it was that they were being sprayed with, and the people were getting sick.
Well, I'm not real familiar with that. I know they hammer us with chemtrails on a pretty much daily basis as far as spraying, but I don't know what you're speaking of in particular. But I tell you what, the community is a lot more educated because of the local activists, our group, and others that follow our lead. Boy, we would love to have you down sometime if for any kind of event here in Daytona Beach. And it is the home of Bethune-Cookman University.
Maybe Bethune could invite me to come down, and then I can hang out with the community folks.
That would be great. And speaking of community, we have somebody here in the listening community from the 704 area code. I'd like to, we're taking calls. We have some in the queue, and so we want to keep our questions and comments as brief as we can. 704, please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Well, this is Renee from North Carolina.
Oh, okay, Renee. We're trying to keep the time managed here. Please hit us with your question and comment.
Okay. Well, you know, one of the biggest problems we face is that oppressors never see themselves as such. They do all kind of mental gymnastics in their mind to avoid facing the truth about what they are, because as Scott Peck, the famous psychiatrist, said in his book, People of the Lie, The Hope for Healing Human Evil, evil happens when people refuse to bear the pain of legitimate guilt. And so the thing is, the yes men who make this all possible, because the master really is such a significantly small group, can do nothing without the overseers and the house slaves. Who
That's
are,
right.
You know, collaborating, as y'all used that word earlier. the masters are completely powerless without the yes men. And of course the military people, they want to believe the lie that they're fighting for freedom. They don't want to see themselves as overseers and oppressors for the masters, so they're willing to go along with and believe the lie so they don't have to feel the pain of legitimate guilt of their conscience. And this is one of our largest obstacles, is all these people who are yes men for the system, and they are not reforming, they're conforming. You know, I'm old enough to remember the 1970s, and it was a big deal when they would make like a woman or a person of color a judge. I mean, I remember that. It was a big deal. But guess what? Nothing happened because those people conformed instead of reforming. Because when they got a seat at the power table, they liked it there, and they ended up turning into the same sort of people that we were trying to do something about.
Yes, and that's a great observation, Renee, from North Carolina. Conformed instead of reformed. Go ahead, Cynthia.
And I would love to get the reference. Maybe, Phil, you can send me the reference that she made, the person, the book.
Okay. Okay, I'll tell you about it. Okay, this book many years ago, I have to say, I think it kept me from being driven crazy. Now, some of the stuff in the back I don't agree with, but one thing that has saved me are books written about evil. And this is, I have a very dog-eared copy of the famous psychiatrist Scott Peck, who wrote The Road Less Traveled, which was very famous. But there's a less well-known one called People of the Lie.
That's right.
And the hope for healing human evil. In many ways, this book saved me because it deals with the slick and covert evil. And, you know, they like us to focus on what I call the amateur evils, but it's really the slick, covert evil that is the kind that is the most insidious and will almost drive you crazy. And like I say, this and another good book is The Lucifer Effect by the guy who ran the Stanford prison experiments. Actually, like I say, studying evil and how it works, because it works very differently than what we are told, because they, like I say, they like to focus on the street criminals and the amateurs. Like I say, these books are two of the books. Studying this really saved me mentally. It made me realize I'm not imagining it, and I'm not crazy. This is real. Very smart and intelligent people are saying that this is a problem and it's real. Right. It's not my imagination.
And we'll have to note that. Thank you, Renee, and maybe we can. Thanks so much for the call, and we'll continue the conversation on that. And we want to thank Renee for calling in, and Renee did bring up a good point, Cynthia. You know, about the folks in position having to go along to get along. And I look back to 9/11, and I was able to speak with Andy Steele on 9/11 Free Fall last month about this. We were talking about the firefighters and their silence, you know, and what kind of pressure they must be under, you know, whatever, to stay silent. But every firefighter and cop in New York City that was on the job on that day, 9/11/01, and you know this, Cynthia, they damn well know what went down, okay? They know those buildings were blown up. Their brothers were in the buildings as they were blowing up and testified as much. 118 firefighters testified so. And there's that code of silence. And this is what happens. You have this phenomenon of, these folks got they've got kids in college or what have you. They got a pension to worry about. They got a mortgage to pay. And it's so hard for somebody to speak up. And if they get up and speak up and they don't have one on their left and one on the right to stand with them, they go down, as you had mentioned earlier in the first hour. Folks like that, they don't stay standing too long if they don't have anyone to help them stand. And, you know, and I was really critical with Andy Steele about these firefighters, you know, and they're so heroic and courageous in so many ways. But the time when they needed to lock elbows, and it wouldn't have taken many to lock elbows and say, no, man, this ain't what they're saying. You know, we could have prevented this damn war, this 12-and-a-half-year war of terror that's taken the lives of millions. And then I wanted to put it in the context, though. You know, yeah, I'm getting on them. I'm not in their shoes, and it's easy for me to say this sitting in Florida, not being on the job in New York. But you go back to those 4 housewife women across the river over in New Jersey, Cynthia. 4 widowed housewives that got together and stood together and took on the Bush administration and Henry Kissinger and everybody and forced a so-called investigation for what it was that was never going to happen. And that demonstrates to me the power of 4 widowed housewives. Can you imagine? Go ahead.
No. I'm just agreeing with you.
Yes. And I
Bill,
think...
let's definitely move this on, because I'm sure we have other callers that want to get in.
We don't, Larry. We don't have other callers. Yeah, well, I'm managing the screen. Okay, so I wanted to get Cynthia's take on as far as the phenomenon of people changing, you know, getting active. You know, what can we do now? It's 12-and-a-half years later, and Cynthia McKinney, her own experience in Congress of standing up and then being alone, not having someone to catch her.
It would have been nice. It really would have been nice. But, you know, I have a couple more quotes that I want to share. And one of them comes from Bobby Kennedy. In 1966, at the height of apartheid, Bobby Kennedy traveled to Cape Town, South Africa, and in an audience full of very privileged white students, he told them, each time a man stands up for an ideal or acts to improve the lot of others, or strikes out against injustice, he sends forth a tiny ripple of hope, and crossing each other from a million different centers of energy and daring, those ripples build a current which can sweep down the mightiest walls of oppression and resistance. Yes. You're talking about 4 New Jersey housewives. And just imagine what they did. And I can think about 4 college students in Greensboro, North Carolina, who sat down and said, we're just going to stay here until you serve us. And they brought in a new era for the United States. So the power of an individual, especially when that individual is acting with other individuals, but the power of an individual is strong. And again, that's why I don't understand why people are feeling hopeless and helpless and powerless, because we are powerful.
If we only use it, if we only exercise it. And I think we don't have any examples. I really believe that people don't know how to not only recognize but actualize their power. I really believe there's such a disconnect there and no example of it. And there is a lot of false example of turning your own power over to some kind of hero or savior. You know, and I think that we need to do more work in shifting that focus back, the focus of power back to us as individuals, and be an example locally. Look at Larry's experience with the Black Panther Party in the work they did in their own communities back in the 60s. What do you think about that, Larry?
About what? You mean
about
what?
how the Black Panther Party came to be back in the 60s, where you started to reclaim your own power and exercise it and realize the power that you did have?
Well, that's found in our quote in the party. We said all power to the people. Fundamentally, the Black Panther Party, and I'm talking about the original party that was founded in October of 1966, was about the people. I mean, we dealt with everything from defending the community from police brutality to trying to get stop signs and traffic lights, okay, and breakfast programs for children, and ambulance programs, and senior citizens programs, and free medical programs. I mean, the list is endless. But again, that's something that's done by the people.
Right.
The party understood that, and today is no different. In fact, perhaps if anything, it's even more urgent today. And I'm not saying the Black Panther Party. I'm saying the mentality, the understanding that we, the people, are not powerless unless we allow ourselves to be powerless. And right. Cynthia is a fine example. I want to just mention very quickly the situation. Cynthia alluded to it earlier in the first hour, what is going on in the city of Detroit. I refer to it as the war-torn city of Detroit because they are under attack by the corporations. And I want to give out kudos to a brother, Reverend Edward Pinkney, who's in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Of course, there's Detroit, Michigan, and Benton Harbor, Michigan. And Reverend Edward Pinkney is in Benton Harbor and has been spearheading for years and years the struggle there to rally the community, to get the community to understand that they are the ones who hold the power. So I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to go on and on.
We have another caller here. We have a caller from the 904 area code. Caller, please give us your name and tell us where you're calling from.
Hi, Phil. It's Tom Santoni calling from the St. Augustine area, Florida.
Hi, Tom. Yes, hi. Welcome. Good to hear your voice.
Thank you. It's good to hear your show, and I appreciate what you and Larry have been doing for these years with the show, and I really appreciate Ms. McKinney's participation this week. I'd like to just make a couple brief comments and then ask a question of each of you, the same question. First off, my pet peeve lately has been, especially in relation to this Israeli-Palestinian war that's going on, is the language, the words that the media and the government use to describe what's happening, especially, the euphemisms, such as so many people are calling what's going on there a conflict. Conflict seems like such a soft, inaccurate word to me. What's really going on there is war and murder. And if people started calling it like it is, telling it like it is, I think that more of the public would get involved and see it for what it is. They call incursions another euphemism for invasion. Let's tell it like it is, and stop obfuscating what's really going on by using words like, the rebels or the militants. I mean, who are the real militants? And who are the real rebels? And, this has just been a pet peeve lately that has come up so much, even by progressive and liberal so-called media sources and talking heads. They even used words like conflict and incursion and soft words that don't really hit home. But anyhow, I was listening earlier to what Cynthia was saying and agree totally that we are losing. we are losing the fight for justice in this country and globally. But I also agree with what she said, that we are powerful. Now, how does that reconcile itself? And I guess this points to the question that I wanted to ask each of you, the same question, just a very brief response would suffice, but I'd like to know of you, Phil, and Larry and Cynthia, what do you think is the single most important way that an individual can get involved so that we can start winning?
Thanks, Tom. Would you like to take that first, Cynthia? Larry? Cynthia?
Well, that is an excellent question, and I encourage people to get involved politically. And I encourage people to actually run for office. The government is not them. It's us. And it's supposed to belong to us. And the us can't be them. The us has to be us. So I encourage average ordinary folk to run for school board, county commission, city council. And we need judges because we have a gentleman by the name of Lawless Bill who's been silenced, but he went around the country and he collected testimony from people who have to deal with corrupt administration of justice. I'm losing my voice. So my answer would be to encourage people to run for office.
Very good. Larry, did you have a response?
Yeah, I guess I encourage people to definitely strongly consider what Sister Cynthia just said. And in addition, I want people to understand that we have to begin at where we are. I think one of the challenges in this struggle is that those of us who think we are, and I say this deliberately, who think we are conscious and aware, and maybe to some degree we are, forget that there are the folks out there, what I call the everyday people, all have their own perspectives, their own experiences, and those experiences and perspectives are legitimate. They may not be of a particular ideology or what I call idiotology, all right, but they have legitimate experiences. We need to learn to listen, as Cynthia said earlier. A good leader is a good listener. So on our very block, let's talk with each other. Let's engage in probing conversations. But let's begin at where people are. It's so easy. It's much easier than people think to segue into other issues if we begin at where people are. And yes, on the local level especially, we act locally, we think globally. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Larry.
Well, thank you, Larry. The way I would answer your question, Tom, is going back to the intro to our show, the mix we have with Gil Scott Heron's Work for Peace and Dr. Martin Luther King's Beyond Vietnam speech. And there's the line there that nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Do something. Work for peace. And what I've found is that we can all do something. We have to do something. Do something, man. Get involved in something. And then you start to find like-minded people, and you start to build relationships and coalitions, and you start to build community. And you've seen that here, Tom, where we are down in Daytona Beach and throughout Central Florida. So that's my answer. And I do want to mention to the listeners that may not know, this is Tom Santoni, a former member of our Central Florida chapter of Veterans for Peace, who in February of 2009, just days after Obama took office,
2003.
No. When you wrote that piece, Impeach Obama, 2009. 2009, Obama took office, and third day in office, he bombed Pakistan. And Tom Santoni penned this piece called Impeach Obama. And this is what we were getting at earlier as far as consistency and staying true to principle, no matter what. And Tom's the fella that wrote it. And I want to encourage folks to go over to globalresearch.ca and look for the article. And that's what led us to bringing the impeachment resolution to the Veterans for Peace, which Cynthia McKinney, I'm proud to say, endorsed it on the very day Obama bombed Libya, 19 March 2011, and our own Larry Pinkney later endorsed that as well. And the reason why I bring this up, it's because this is putting principle before politics. And boy, you're out there hanging alone when you do something like that. But somebody's got to be out there. And I really believe once we start applying the same standards for the same crimes, no matter who's doing it, like Malcolm X said, I think then we're going to start to see some real change. But go ahead, Cynthia.
I have another idea, too, that I'd like to put into the mix. And I think about it because since I've been so intense doing this PhD work, I needed a little release. And so I've gotten involved with my local community radio station. And I would encourage people, if you're not the activist type, but you want to do something, community radio listening to community radio is a great way to become more informed about what's going on in the community. In my local community radio station, which is WRFG, I can listen to music from the Indian subcontinent, Americana music, blues, jazz, bluegrass, zydeco. I get every community that's in Atlanta, Georgia on that radio station. And therefore, I learn the issues that are confronting each community. While they're spinning music, they're also talking about their issues. And I listen to Spanish language. I don't know how to speak Spanish, but the passion comes through and I can learn a few words. So I think listening to community radio is also one passive way to be a bit active, if that kind of makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I agree. You're getting involved in the community. Start at home, with the people that are right next door to you. And I think we may have another call coming in. Tom, is there anything else you wanted to add before we moved on?
Thanks for taking my call, Phil. Let's hear what the next caller has to say.
Oh, you bet.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Well, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. I know we have another. It's not here yet, but I really believe this, Cynthia, that this is, we've got to be people with television and iPhones and cable TV and computers. People don't come out of their houses anymore like they used to, and anyway, I had the call drop. Go ahead.
I have another quote that I'd like to contribute to the mix, and this one is from President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Mm-hmm. He said, "Every gun that's made, every warship launched, every rocket fired signifies in the final sense a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, the hopes of its children. This is not a way of life at all. in any true sense. Under the clouds of war, it is humanity hanging on a cross of iron. Now, can you imagine that a Republican president said that?
Imagine that, yes. But there's a fella who is being honest.
That's right.
And you know, when you start putting loyalty to team secondary to the truth, as someone like yourself has had for years, and Larry says this as well, you know, being real.
So now who's going to say that today? Because President Obama isn't saying it. And I think, you know, you're right, Phil. We have to have standards.
Yes.
And then we have to apply those standards across the board.
Yes.
So if peace and wariness of a military, industrial, congressional, financial, media complex is worthy of our extra attention with an askance eye, then we need to beware of that in every manifestation. So when the president tells us that Russia, we're supposed to hate Russia, we need to look at why we're being told this, that we need to hate China. We need to ask ourselves and then search for the answer. Why are we being told this? Who's going to benefit if I hate Russia?
Exactly.
Who's going to benefit if I hate China? Who's going to benefit if I hate, period?
Right. And who's going to benefit? Using our minds, think, question who is benefiting from this.
That's right, because there are winners. There's clear winners. There's clear winners in what's happening right now. You can talk about the loss of life, the bloodshed. You can talk about the outrageous military expenditures. You can talk about the misplaced values and the misplaced priorities, but somebody's winning. Mm-hmm. Who are those people who are winning?
Follow the money. Follow the money. Follow and you know of Michael Rivero, Cynthia McKinney, and he did a program a year or two ago now that was entitled "All Wars Are Bankers' Wars," and he, like yourself, he's not afraid to follow the money and influence and follow it back to the pro-Israel lobby in a lot of instances that are behind these policies, these U.S. policies of wars abroad. Okay.
I have two more things before we wind down, and one is a reference the woman from North Carolina, from the 704 caller. I have a book that I'd like to recommend to her, and it's by Iris Marion Young. And the title is Responsibility for Justice. And in this book, she outlines what the responsibilities are for people who participate in a system that is unjust. And of course, we know that individual action is not enough when it's only one person doing it, but individual actions from wherever those individuals might be, as Larry likes to say, can change things. And her idea is to focus not on the guilt of generations for past actions, but on the responsibility for future justice.
Responsibility for future justice. That's where we're at. We've got to, we have responsibility, And what was the other quote? The with knowledge comes responsibility.
That's right.
And getting back to Dr. King, when the same thing, the same message, when you become aware of a crime, whether you wanted to be or not, you're witness. And with that, you're responsible. And then silence is betrayal.
That's right.
And these things are all tied together, and they're great signs and they're great quotes, but the thing needed for actual affecting change is to put them in action.
Yes.
Put them into action, and it's harder to do than it is to talk, and you're a great example of one who does and has done. But could you repeat the author of that book again, please? Iris?
Iris, I-R-I-S,
Mm-hmm.
Marion, M-A-R-I-O-N.
Yes.
Young, Y-O-U-G.
Okay, we'll include that. And responsibility for justice.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Well, I know we're getting kind of late, and it's towards your almost past your bedtime here.
It's past my bedtime.
It's already past your bedtime. I don't think we have another call here. Is there anything you wanted to close out for us, Cynthia? You have the book, you have the new book that was out last year on Clarity Press, Ain't Nothing Like Freedom. You have the documentary I failed to mention, which chronicles your experiences running for Congress in 2002 and 2004 and all the shenanigans that went on there, as well as it touched a bit on what happened in Ohio, I believe, in 2004 in the National. That's a documentary named American Blackout, 2006, and there's a Facebook page for it, facebook.com/American Blackout. And did you want to mention anything about that or speak to that?
Well, I think you've pretty much explained that. I would just encourage people to look at it, and it tells the story of the shenanigans around my elections, why it's so difficult in Georgia. But there's another video, a shorter documentary, a 25-minute documentary that appeared on Al Jazeera, and it's on YouTube, available for people to look at, and it's called "We Define the System Doesn't Define Us." That one is a nice shorter version of American Blackout, and I would encourage people to look at that. And maybe if you guys can let me go a few minutes earlier,
sure.
I would give you my last sort of, I don't know, it's like I just got into these quote things. I didn't have any idea of what I was going to do, but they seem to be good talking points for us for tonight.
Yes.
And then this last one, which kind of keeps me, because, my spirits are not always up, and sometimes my spirits get down, and I see things that are happening, and people think that I can change the world. They think I can move a mountain, and they call on me for everything, and I have to gently remind them that I'm no longer in office. And so you need to call your own representative, but they don't get anywhere, and that's why they end up calling me. And and then I look around and I see that, we're not winning, and that causes me some concern. And so anyway, I subscribe to this, daily little thought that comes by Taro Gold. And the saying is, make your spirit flexible and nothing will ever bend you out of shape. Isn't that wonderful?
I love it.
Yeah, make your spirit flexible and nothing will ever bend you out of shape. So that's what I think about, and that's what gives me resiliency so that I can go on and try to solve the next person's problem.
Yes.
Cynthia, you reminded me of something I got to tell you real quick. I know you got to go to bed, so do I, but I got to tell you this. Look, when you said that, you reminded me of when I was in prison, and I knew this Filipino brother who was also in prison with me. His name was Felipe. I shall always remember that brother. And when the brother in Ireland, I'm trying to remember his name. I must be having a senior moment here.
Bobby Sands.
Bobby Sands. Yeah.
Yes.
When Bobby died, okay, I was so outraged. I said,
Yes.
that's it. I'm not going to go. That's it. I'm going on a hunger strike to the death. And so I began this hunger strike, and this was a prison of about maybe 1,500 men. And the prisoners couldn't understand, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? So I tried to tell them, and this Felipe came into my cell, and he looked at me. He said, Larry, you know I love you. I said, I love you too, Phil. He said, I have one, thing to say to you that I want you to really think about. He said, we need you. Don't kill yourself. We need you. And He said, now this is how you reminded me. He then said, Larry, I'm from the Philippines. He said, Larry, you are tall, strong, oak. He said, but the storm comes. The wind comes. You stand tall, and then it happens again and again, and finally, one day, the oak breaks, it snaps. He said, my brother, be a bamboo. Be a bamboo. Bend, and not give up your principles. He wasn't saying that. He was saying exactly the quote. He said, bend, and always come back to where you were before. So it sent chills through my body when you made that quote, because this is what I strive to be, and I was so glad, because I know our listeners want to know, how does Cynthia continue? How in the midst of all of this insanity and treachery and chicanery, how does she continue? Well, we all have our ups and downs, and I sure as hell do. But you know what, sister? I'm going to say this, and I want our audience to listen closely. We need 10,000 more Cynthia McKinney. 10,000. 10,000 more Cynthia McKinneys. And we can do it. We're the only ones who can do it. Sister, I love you so much. I salute you. I salute you. I salute you. Thank you for being both Harriet Tubman and Fannie Lou Hamer rolled into one. Thank you, my sister.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to sign off now. For the last 8 minutes, I'll leave it to you guys.
And I'd like to thank you too, Cynthia, for being on the program tonight. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Your website, allthingscynthiamckinney.com.
Yes, and the Facebook page.
Facebook.com/Cynthia McKinney Official. And there's also the book, Ain't Nothing Like Freedom, out on Clarity Press. Please take a look. Ain't Nothing Like Freedom by Cynthia McKinney. It's been a privilege and honor, and we wish you all the best, Miss McKinney. God bless you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for being with us.
Bye-bye.
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 Well, that was really something, Larry. It was a real treat to have Cynthia on this month with us and to spend so much time with us.
Isn't she so down to earth?
Real.
She's isn't she, see how down to earth she is? This is what, right there is an example of what we need to be with each other. Just down to earth, everyday people. And that's just one real. Of the things I love about her.
It's true. And you for years had that column which describes what you're talking about, keeping it real with Larry Pinkney. And I believe that's what enables for these kinds of discussions, Larry, and that transcend these artificial divides. I mean, look how you and I met. You know, you were being real about, and I'm real. I'm who I am. I don't pretend to be anybody else that I'm not, and that's the way you are. As long as we're real, we're going to find each other.
Right.
It's when we start to compromise, when we start to calculate, you know, if I sound this way, maybe I'll get somewhere with that one. You know, once we start doing that, and that's prevalent throughout the entire system, politics especially, you know, once we start to compromise, that's when we start to lose, man. And those who don't are the Cynthia McKinneys, the Martin Luther Kings, the Larry Pinkneys of the world. And as you mentioned, boy, we'd love to have 10,000. I'd like to have 10 more Cynthia McKinneys, you know, and God bless her. Thankfully, we have her to start with.
Right.
Did you have any other closing comments before we wrap it up tonight, Larry?
Just want to say thank you, Phil, for a magnificent job, as always. Thanks to Dave Corso, who is always on the case, always. Thanks to Wolf Spirit Radio, and most of all, thanks to our many, many listeners out there. You know, we got to keep it real. We got to make it real. There was a song that came out back in the day, late 60s, early 70s, try to make it real, but compared to what? Well, compared to what we want. What kind of world, what kind of nation do we want? Try to make it real compared to what we want. And so, you know, as we said in the original Black Panther Party, all power to the people. You know, this is a time to redouble, you know, our efforts, redouble our efforts. And at the darkest times, when things look the darkest, there's always that silver lining. And that silver lining is people like each and every one of us. And yeah, I meant what I said. Let's have 10,000 Cynthia McKinneys and Phil Restinos. You know, let's have 10,000. And when we get there, we've only just begun. So, my brother, thank you so very, very much. Dave Corso, thank you so very much. To the listeners, I say thank you. All power to the people.
I cannot be silent.
Nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Everyone must play a part. Everyone's got to go to work. Work for peace. Spirit said work.
I cannot be silent.